Hola, it's Joe Pardavila, and this is the Forbes Books Podcast. And this week on the pod, we're going to talk about success. And it makes sense, since this is a podcast that features successful CEOs and entrepreneurs on the regular. There's this great quote from Dale Carnegie: "Success is getting what you want. Happiness is wanting what you get." But my guest this week says that success is not a goal, it's a lifestyle. His name is Gary Cooper, and he's opening up about his struggles on the road to prosperity in the new book, The Success Paradox. Gary, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Good morning to you, sir. And before we get talking about the book that's coming out in spring of 2023, I want to step back a little bit and talk about you and what brought you here. I understand you're the co-founder and executive chairman of Palmetto Infusion Services. And for folks not from the Low Country or from the South Carolina area, what is Palmetto Infusion? What do you do there?
Palmetto Infusion is a really amazing company. We have the privilege of taking care of really sick patients with chronic autoimmune diseases. They come into our centers. They're very open and inviting centers. Our patients have chronic diseases like MS, Crohn's, colitis, arthritis, asthma, lifelong limiting diseases. And they come in and they get infusions. And these drugs started a little over 20 years ago, and no one wanted to do them. You could either get them in a hospital, sometimes doctor's offices, and they were really hard to get, and they were really an afterthought of healthcare. And we were in the home infusion business, and someone asked us if we would do it. We decided to do it. And over 23 years, we've created this really cool ambulatory infusion center. That's what they're technically called. Mm-hmm. And they look like a doctor's office. They really look like a spa and a doctor's office combined. We have 50 centers throughout 5 states and about 11,000 patients that come in every 2 to 6 weeks with these diseases and get infusions that radically change their lives.
Wow. And I'm curious, what was the effect of COVID during these treatments? Because you've set the stage. These are folks that need help. They're immunocompromised. Any little thing could set them off to a dark path. How did you guys handle working with these patients during the pandemic?
That's a really good question. For 15 years, we were telling the insurance companies and the patients and the doctors that we were not only more convenient, not only 50% cheaper than the hospital, but we were safer. Hospitals, look, they're very necessary. I'm not beating up the hospitals, but if you want to get sick, go to a hospital. There's a lot of sick people there. There's a lot of bugs and infections. And our centers, if you have a cold, you don't come in. And so our places were really safe. And so during Corona, literally every hospital and most doctors' offices sent their patients to us. We didn't miss one day. And that's not a testament to really us as a company. It's a testament to our employees. They were just fearless. And so our 11,000 patients didn't miss a dose of their medication.
Wow.
It's incredible. So we stayed open the entire time. We were a safer environment. It sounds like I'm bragging, but I'm really not. It's just a testament to the facility itself and the model where patients come into these places and is in a safer. And we're not the only company that does this, so that the way ambulatory infusion centers work is a better model.
And yeah, well, let's dig into that. You say you're not the only company that does this. What is I know this sounds a little crass in the scope of things, but what is the competition like in the infusion center industry?
No, it's a great question. There, for 15 or more years, there was only 3 states that had places like us. It was us. There was a company called Paragon out in the Texas area, kind of the southwest. And then there was a company in Tennessee. And then the other options were hospitals or doctor's offices, rheumatologists, neurologists, and some gastroenterologists did infusions.
Okay.
But not many places did all the infusions for all the different types of specialists. So we were a place where you would see patients with GI issues, neurology issues, allergy issues, all the different types of patients. Now, over the last 15 or 20 years, there are a lot of what you could consider competitors.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting is we've all kind of have pockets of the nation where we operate. So we're in the Southeast, and then there's groups in the Northeast and the Midwest, and we're all pretty much friends.
That's pretty amazing.
Well, for now,
Yeah.
eventually we'll start getting on each other's nerves and going into each other's territories, and ultimately that's good for the patient, where there's more options. So right now there's 3 options to get infusions. One is in the hospital, one is at the doctor's office, and one is in a freestanding center like ours.
And pardon the pun, business acumen is in your blood. You're very open talking about the fact that you learned so much from your father, Charles Cooper, and the impact that he had on your life. Was he sort of your Obi-Wan, your Yoda when it came to being an entrepreneur and being a business person?
He was. I tell people he was my founder, my father, and my financier. So, and he was my best friend. So he was kind of everything. And my favorite thing about him in business was he really taught me how to do business the opposite way. And what I mean by that is he rarely thought about making money. For example, we've never turned down patients because they couldn't pay. We would take patients without insurance. We would take patients with, drugs that we don't make money on or we actually lose a lot of money on. And what that tells a doctor is these people are for real. And so we don't have to fight for the really profitable business, because if we would do that for patients that we lose money on and we take really good care of them, imagine what we do for the patients where they're profitable. And I learned that from him. He played what I call the long game. And, he was just such a generous man with his employees and with his patients. And what's interesting is he told me things like, son, never get greedy. And I was like, oh, okay, why? And he said, if you get greedy, you can only get it once. But if you're not greedy, you'll get repeat business the rest of your life. Just little things like that is why I'm so grateful that he was my mentor.
And did he talk to me about this introduction to infusion centers? Was he involved in it? Did he know about it? Like, how did you even know this was a thing, as they say?
Well, he was not involved in it from the standpoint of day to day, but it was his philosophies that got me into it. I got into the home healthcare industry because of him. I grew up in nursing homes as a child, and in the 70s and 80s, they literally tied patients down in the beds because they didn't have psychotropic medications back then that could calm patients down. And when I was in graduate school, he asked me what I wanted to do. And I thought of just taking a job with someone. And he said, no, son, I mean, really, what do you want to do? I think he meant like, what is your calling?
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, Dad, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And he said, well, that's what I want you to really think about. And I remember those little old ladies laying in nursing home beds, screaming to get out of them. And I called him back and I said, I would like to keep patients out of nursing homes or hospitals. I thought I would offend him because that's where he spent his career. And he said, well, hell, son, why don't we start us a home health care company? And I said, is it that simple? And he said, well, hell no, it's not that simple. But if it was, everybody would do it. And so I spent my graduate degree and thesis on home health care and got into the business with him and his money. And he is my boss and founder. And as I was doing that, I did home health care, home medical equipment, and then home infusion. And as I was doing home infusion, I ran into this wonderful couple named Mike and Pam Busby, and they did home infusion. And they had another lady named Connie Hartley, who was amazing. And they called me one day and they said, look, we have 72 hours to buy our business, close it, or sell it. And we would like you to partner with us. I called my father and he said, what do you think? And I said, I would like to do it. And in 72 hours, we partnered with them. And within about a year, this drug called Remicade came out. It was the first biologic drug, and hospitals didn't want to do it. It was another chance to keep people out of the hospitals. It was that simple. Now, we had to jump through lots of hoops. There was no billing code for it. We didn't have a facility, and we literally scrambled around and found something about the size of a large closet and put a recliner in it, and we started treating patients. And we ran up a line of credit of about $1 million on my dad, and he almost had a heart attack. And we almost went bankrupt doing it. And lo and behold, we ended up fixing it and getting it straight, and we went from a $2 million company over about 6 years to a $40 million company.
Wow.
With these new drugs. You know, he died about a year later, and but he was really proud that we figured out a new angle and a new avenue to help people.
Wow. What a great story. And I know it's hard to sort of draw down to one answer, but what do you think I hate using these businessy terms, but what was the secret sauce that took you from 2 to 40? I'm sure there's a little more nuance to it than just giving we did this thing, but what, looking back now, what do you think it was that you were able to not only survive, but thrive during those early years?
One word would be hard work. Another word would be opportunistic. There was no one else willing to do this.
Wow.
I think the word would really be willingness. Mike and Pam were willing. They deserve all the credit. Mike, Pam, and Connie. I was running the home health care company. And Robert King was our medical equipment partner. He was running the medical equipment business. And Mike and Pam and Connie were running the home infusion and ambulatory infusion company, which was something that was brand new, literally in the country. And it was their willingness and hard work, because this was a new business. I tell people all the time, we were like Chris Stapleton. You know, for 15 years, Chris Stapleton played music and nobody gave a damn. And then, you know, he goes on the Super Bowl with Justin Timberlake, and he was a, 15-year overnight success.
Right.
And that's really what happened to Palmetto Infusion. We were 15, 17 years playing our music. Nobody would loan us money, scraping for nickels, barely getting by, growing a $40, $50 million business. And then, we sold it in 2007. And then 3 years later, bought it back for nothing.
Can you take me back to the reasoning for selling the company at the time? Was it just one of the things where you're like, okay, I've gone as far as I can go with this?
Well, we bought the company for $159,000 and grew it to $40 million.
That's a good profit margin there.
It's not bad.
No.
And we were all exhausted. And then when you're a small entrepreneur and big private equity or publicly traded companies come in, you get really scared. And we didn't have the infrastructure that we have today. We didn't have the capital that we have today. And, to be quite honest, we were tired. And, we reached the summit. The only way that entrepreneurs can go to the next level is they have to plow all of their profits back in
Right.
to rebuild the infrastructure to go to the next level. And I don't think we had the stomach for it then. So we sold the company in 2007, and then we had a couple of years to reflect, and we missed our business. And you can call it God, you can call it fate, you can call it whatever you want to call it, but we got a do-over. And in 2011, we got a chance to buy our baby back.
Wow.
And in 2011, we put a group of us together, and we were able to buy Palmetto Infusion back.
Was it, Gary, the old Godfather Part 3, every time I try to get out, they pull me back in. Was there some sort of attraction there? You're like, I want to quit this, but I just can't.
That's hilarious. No, I think we all, I love that saying that Michael Jordan had, you can only play so much golf.
Right.
I had some other businesses that I was involved in. I think Mike had been down in Florida fishing, playing in real estate. Robert King was operating in real estate, but healthcare people are healthcare people. And I'm sure that's the same for other people that are in industries. And we all missed healthcare. And so I tell people we were like the Blues Brothers. We just put the band back together. And that's literally what we did. But this time we had the benefit of hindsight.
Yeah.
And we put the band back together, but we were more intentional. We were more mature, and we realized we had to have infrastructure. And we also knew that we didn't want to kill ourselves this time. And so we really came at it from a more managerial standpoint than a entrepreneurial gunslinging standpoint. We had to have both. Founders are habitual entrepreneurs, me included. But we really brought David Goodall, who was our controller the first time around, and we brought him in as a CFO, and he was very involved in the management. So I think that was the difference, at least in the beginning.
And by the way, I didn't mean to imply that infusion centers are akin to the mafia, so I just don't want you to think that I was...
I did not take it as that at all. I thought it was hilarious.
Okay, good. So now that you've accumulated all this skill, all this knowledge, you want to, as they say, pay it forward, and you've decided to write a book with Advantage Forbes Books called The Success Paradox, which is going to be published in spring of 2023. And it seems like the thread line from your father to today continues to run. Your father was always about helping people, no matter what it cost of business. And I mean, it's sort of like a perfect full circle moment that now you want to pay it forward and help the next generation of entrepreneurs and current entrepreneurs. First, let's start with the title, Success Paradox. What does that mean? Well,
I wish the book was purely based on success. It's not. It's I wish it was a beautiful story based off my dad passing me a baton and all that stuff, but it's not. It has a lot of dark places in it. After my dad died, I ended up doing, I don't have a unique story, I don't believe. I ended up chasing what some would call the American dream, but I did it obsessively. I thought if I just reached this new high ridge on the mountain, that I would be better, that I would have made it. I thought if I sold this company, if I reached this level of achievement, if I reached this level of financial success, if I reached this award, if I did this, I would be good. I would be successful. And every time I reached a new level, there would be somebody bigger, better, stronger, faster. Then when I reached that level of success, I would double down like a riverboat gambler and go risk it all again to get a higher level of success. And my dad had 6 back surgeries before he died at 59.
Wow.
And I always said I wouldn't do that. And so I ran 50 or 60 miles a week my entire life to stay thin. I call myself a do-aholic. I wasn't just working hard. I would run 50 or 60 miles a week. I was my kids' coach in Little League soccer and basketball, and I wanted to be the political fundraiser of the year for the governor races and the senator races. And then I also wanted to be the guy that would volunteer of the year at church, and I wanted to be everywhere. In any room I walked into, if I felt less than, I wanted to go and work my way to the top. And I used alcohol to fuel that. And unfortunately, I ended up having to have back surgery like my dad.
Oh, geez.
And that didn't work. And then I had to have both of my hips replaced. And I used more alcohol. And you can see where this is headed.
Not good.
Not good. And I made a lot of really, really poor decisions that humiliated my wife and my kids, alienated my partners, and only by the grace of God was I pulled out of that lion's mouth. And the past almost 6 years, I have learned that chasing that dream really is a waste of time. And it was about a year after I was having a major change in my life and getting over my 3rd hip replacement and realizing that you don't have to chase all these things, that our best friend's kid killed himself.
Wow.
And I walked in this man's house and he said, "You definitely have a drinking problem. But what you really have is a comparison problem." He said, "Why don't you compare yourself to yourself?" And I'm like, "What does that look like?" And he said, "Are you better today than you were yesterday?" And he told me that about 6 months before Jack killed himself. And it struck me the day Jack killed himself that kids are doing this every day. And if I'm doing it at 45, I can't imagine how hard it is for kids. And if I'm doing it and I have the businesses and I have the house on the hill and I have 4 kids and I have everything that any man would ever dream of, what about all the other people in the world? But I'm learning these amazing things and I'm finding peace and I'm finding contentment and I'm finding this stuff. And then I watched this movie it was about Harriet Tubman. And Harriet, gets out of true slavery. And then she risked it all to go back over and over and over and over. And it kind of struck me that she may have been free physically, but she wasn't free mentally. And the way that I stay free mentally is going back and helping people over and over and over. And so I don't need the material things. They're nice, don't get me wrong. I would rather be comfortable than not. But what keeps me free from chasing these elusive things that don't really make me happy is helping people. And so I tried to do a book 3 or 4 years ago, and it wasn't the message I wanted to get out. I wanted to do a book like Chicken Soup for the Soul, where, look, I'm a 50-year-old Caucasian dude that's had success. Hopefully people can identify with that. I'm going to put it in a nonprofit, but I hope this book generates enough success where we can have one for females, because their issues are totally different. And I would love to have a successful, famous person like Demi Lovato or someone like that will write the book. And I'd love to have one for African Americans and minorities with a famous person that would do it for the nonprofit. And I desperately want to have one for 15 to 25-year-olds, because all of them have different issues than a 50-year-old white successful male. And I'm setting up the nonprofit with a board that I'm not on, and I've contributed all the money that I've put into this book into that nonprofit. So that's my mission. And I hope the book's successful.
All right. Well, I mean, there's a lot to unpeel there. And I kind of want to just start by I'll ask you a sort of a cold-hearted question. A young person that killed themselves, that wasn't your child. You had your own struggles. Why is it important for you to help other people today? I mean, because someone could say, like, Gary, why are you going through all this trouble? It's not like you lost your kid. It's not like you went through something like this. Why is it important for you to make this part of your life's mission here in the back nine of your career?
That's a perfectly valid question. And I would answer this way very bluntly. It is self-serving. It is self-serving. The more I help people, the less I think about Gary. When I'm helping people, I forget what it is that I may be obsessing about. And I think that's the message, that when people lose themselves in helping other people, they forget about their own little troubles. For example, we had a hurricane here about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we lost a dock. We had 4 feet of water in our house. And people were like, oh my God, that's terrible. And my first thought was, man, that sucks. That's probably about $150,000 worth of damage. My second thought was, you asshole. One of your best friend's kids is dying. So I have to keep things in perspective, because I can easily go negative. And the more I'm thinking about other people, the less I'm thinking about Gary. So it is absolutely self-serving. But the emotional reward, I call it emotional income. I get emotional income when I'm helping other people.
Gary, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, talking about your friend who their child passed away by suicide, and you talked about the comparison trap and something that you fell into. I feel like the comparison trap is almost an inevitability for everyone nowadays, and I don't want to be these people that blame social media for everything, but because of social media, we're more likely to fall in the comparison trap than we ever were before it came around, because back in the olden times before social media, you could only compare yourself to people in your community, whether it's a neighbor, coworker, family member. Now you can compare yourself to the entire planet. So talk to me about fighting your way through the comparison trap in 2022.
I would say one of my addictions was social media. And, you can't blame social media. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife is a commandment, right?
Yeah, it's one of them. It's one of the 10, right?
So it's been around for a while.
Yeah.
It's not like we have a monopoly on this stuff. And I heard this amazing story about Alfred Nobel, and this is in the book. And he invented dynamite. And he was going to his brother's funeral, and they printed his obituary instead of his brother's. And it said, the master of death is dead. Now, this man thought he invented one of the greatest inventions ever. And it was building roads and dams and all that kind of stuff but he also thought it would end wars. He thought dynamite was like the A-bomb. It was so destructive they would quit fighting wars because it was so dangerous. I think of that kind of like social media. Social media has explosive good, but it also has explosive bad. And so instead of focusing on the negative, because it's so easy to focus on the negative, how can I focus on the good of it? It's fantastic for my mother, who's almost 80. She can keep up with her kids, her grandkids, her friends from high school that, are going away. She can stay in touch with people. She can see what's going on. She doesn't have to leave the house. That is amazing. But it's also really creepy. There's some creepy things that they do to project things into 16-year-old girls' bedrooms to make them feel less than. Or creepy things that grown men do, and women, I guess, do for bad. But only I can control what I do. So the comparison trap is terrible. And so only I can control how I use it. So one of the things that I've suggested doing in the book is put a time limit on when you go on it. It's easy to go down rabbit trails. Mm-hmm. Even on LinkedIn, which is a business site, which I use, I pay somebody else to manage it for me. But I use it as well. So I put a time limit. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go on it for 30 minutes and I'm going to research somebody in this particular field, but I'm going to get on it for 30 minutes. And I set a timer because it's easy for me to get lost in it. So it's I think building my own self-esteem is my way of combating social media and its implications on myself. It's tougher for children. And I think it starts in the home, but that's a snowball. And I don't have all the answers, but I know it starts at the individual basis.
There's this one pet peeve of mine when I listen to female entrepreneurs being interviewed or female CEOs. They'll be like, talk to me about your work-life balance. How are you a mother and also a CEO? And I always found those questions really gross because I feel like those questions wouldn't be asked of a man. Very rarely do you ever see a man being asked, how do you balance a fatherhood and being a businessman? You never see that. But I'm going to ask you that question. You've got 4 kids. Your father was obviously a big influence in your life. How do you balance being a father and being a successful businessman? How does that all come together?
That's something that I didn't do before, or if I did, I love the word doaholic, and I think the word I want to use for the children, I call them children. I'm 50, the 15 to 25-year-olds. I would use the word compareaholic. When I was a doaholic, I didn't, even if I was there, I wasn't there for my kids. I was there, but I was staring at my screen. And so today I have to work at work-life balance. It is an effort. I'd like to go back to that question that you don't think is fair for ladies. I totally agree with you. I was with a major executive for a big bank last week, and he said that he fired a man for asking that question of women. And dude, I gave him knuckles. I was like, good for you, man. Because he told the guy to quit asking that question to ladies in interviews, and he kept doing it, and he fired him.
Wow.
I think the best answer I can give you on work-life balance is I had to learn to say no. I had to learn to say no. Another thing I did, I have done, and I live by, is I learned that I was better at running businesses than my personal life. So I ended up running my personal life like a business. So I created a mission, vision, and values for my personal life. And I created a 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year goals for my personal life. And the first one was to be a good father and a husband. The second one was be sober. And it went on down for the first year, 3 year, and 5 year. I think the third one is to be the best chairman and founder of Palmetto Infusion. And I'll tell you how that works. I was invited to be a partner in a hotel that was being built here locally. And I immediately said yes. And I came home and told my wife. And she said, I thought you were simplifying. And I said, yeah, but man, it would be cool to be a part of this hotel. And she said, how much debt is it? And I said, oh, crap, I forgot to ask that. And I went back and they said $18 million. And I said, oh, goodness, I can't do that. And I ended up not doing the hotel because I went back and revisited my mission, vision, and values. And I had the ability to say no because I had these core values and I had this 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan, and that hotel was not in it.
Gary, I was afraid that you were going to say that you hire someone to manage your family like your LinkedIn. So I'm glad that you are more hands-on with the brood of 5 at home than you are with your LinkedIn account. So that's great to hear.
I run everything by my wife now, and that's something that I didn't do before.
And out of curiosity, lastly, you got the 4 kids, as I mentioned. Do they have that Cooper entrepreneurial spirit running through them, or are they kind of doing their own thing? Or, talk to me about what you're doing as sort of like a father/mentor to your 4 kids.
My dad didn't push anything on any of us. One of my sisters was a school teacher and a basketball coach. And my dad told me that she's done more for society than any of us. One sister is a pharmacist, and one brother owned a landscaping company. And oddly enough, all 3 of them are realtors now. And so I've done the same thing with our 4 kids. I don't know what they'll be yet. One's out of college and kind of finding her way, and 2 are in college. 2 boys. The daughter's out. The 2 boys are still in college, and a 10th grader is in high school and playing basketball. So I don't know yet. I haven't pushed anything on any of them, and we shall see.
Well, Gary, it sounds like you have your head on straight after some years of struggles and finding your way. And I love how you talk about the fact that, it's like the old adage, it's better to give than receive. I mean, that's been sort of like your ethos. Like, you feel better when you're giving. And I think the world is a much better place for it when Gary Cooper's out there doing that.
Well, I know Gary's a lot better when Gary's out there doing that. and what's interesting is my wife comments frequently how our children are very giving. And so if that's one of the examples that I've set a few bad ones. It was only a couple years of that, fortunately. Some of my friends, unfortunately, had decades of that. I only had a couple of years of that due to back surgery and hip replacements. But, I think sometimes the worst things that happen to us become the greatest. And I'm really grateful for the troubles and struggles that I had. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, and I'm really sorry that it happened to my family and my friends and business partners. But I do believe it turned me into a much greater person. And I do know now that it has made me become the person that really not only wants to give, but also needs to.
Well said. Well, and Gary, all the GOATs, all the greats have a bad year. I mean, look at Tom Brady. He's having a bad year right now. So, Gary Cooper had a couple bad seasons along the way. So it happens to the best of us. So, Gary, looking forward to the book. It's called Success Paradox. Look for it in spring of 2023. Gary, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Hey, man, thank you. I appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day.
You too, Gary. And that's it for this episode of the Forbes Books Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you take a second to subscribe so you automatically get new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I would love if you left us a review so more amazing entrepreneurs like yourself can discover the show. And please don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.